And now I'd like to talk about a different subject. Sheftel is with us. Hello, Mr. Sheftel. Do you have patience for a moment? I'd like to discuss something that I think will interest you. I have patience. We'll keep it brief. General Yitzhak Brik had something happen to him that doesn't happen to most people. He managed to influence people and life itself on the whole system. Very few people have that privilege, and he did. First of all, in the current war, and also ultimately, you reached the Prime Minister's office and you influenced him regarding his decisions. Tell me what you can tell me about this strange event. You met with him for 7 hours in the Prime Minister's office, not in the Prime Minister's office, in my brother's home. I met with him twice. You met with him and you waited. Yes, because they kept postponing it. There was someone in the office who didn't want us to meet. Why? I'll tell you why one day in your ear, and can I make it public? I'll tell you then. The Prime Minister ultimately understood with all the internal pressure. You waited for 7 hours? Twice I waited for 7 hours. The first time was a week before, I don't recall the date. And the second time was, the first time was about 2 weeks ago, and then a week. And he insisted that I come. He invited me in opposition to his advisors. The first time I sat with him for an hour and a half, and I explained to him what would happen. And let me add one more thing. A day before I came, it was Friday, 7 o'clock in the evening. The day earlier, on Thursday, there was a meeting of the cabinet, the smaller cabinet, because they were discussing the decision to enter Gaza on Saturday night. And I met with him a day after that decision that's going to be carried out 24 hours later. And I was explaining my position to him, not to enter Gaza at that point, to continue crushing them from the air, to create a stranglehold, to surround them, to weaken them, and then the entry would be accordingly, not to come in with a big army into the quagmire. And he agreed. And he changed the date of the entry. And that gave additional good days for training and preparation for the army, which Herzi Halevi, the chief of staff, did with great wisdoms. Would you like to comment? The ground entry that began at the end of this week was supposed to have started at the end of the previous week, if I understand correctly. Yes, you understand correctly. So in retrospect, I don't pretend to be a military tactician, although Corporal Sheftel has proved in strategic matters that he was far more realistic than all the wise intelligence and other wise people in the top brass. It's completely clear that the military entry on the date that it occurred at the end of the previous week was the right timing. The army appears to be operating in the right way. And I also advised my good friend, and I'm happy to tell Yitzhak Brik, the last time I met with the Minister of Internal Security, Ben Gvir, I suggested to him to consult with Yitzhak Brik to advise him on the subject of the National Guard that needs to be in the format of the unit that General Brik spoke about. In other words, a National Guard that includes many, many people who bore arms in the past, who are not being called up to active reserve duty now. And I recall that I, together with Shimon Riklin, interviewed General Brick at the beginning of his public campaign, which contributed so much to Israel's security. And we kept asking him questions so that he could present his approach as broadly as possible on television. And I can guess and say that Ben-Gvir did not come to you. No. His assistant spoke to me. At that time, there was a problem that the Home Front Command became involved. What I said is that we need, as Sheftel said, to arm the communities of Judea and Samaria and of the north and the south, and to build what we call a national guard inside Israel, not first responder units with handguns, but with rifles, because no one will be there for them. And it started to work with Ben-Gvir and with the Home Front Command, and there wasn't a good connection between them. And I said, make sure there's that connection. You shouldn't work in parallel. You should work together. And I think they adopted that idea. I'd just like to mention there has been a wave of missiles on our communities in the north. I don't know if the missiles came from the north or from the south. Sheftel, I would like to ask you or tell you about a dilemma and how you see the rules or laws or ordinances of all different kinds regarding the rules of engagement, so that every officer or soldier who is at the front is going with a lawyer in their head. And we saw that with soldiers in a tank, and we saw the terrorists trying to come in from Gaza, and they didn't shoot at them because they were unarmed. Look, one cannot relate to the matter as rules of engagement as if they are just a technical military matter. The spirit of the dictatorship of the High Court of Justice, of the Bagatz, created a situation that at the height of the invasion of these Gazan barbarians into Israel, Israeli soldiers even bothered to check if they were armed or not. That's a complete bankruptcy of values. Until a short time ago, it was forbidden to fire at a Bedouin who entered an army base to steal weapons. And it's still forbidden. It's forbidden to shoot at them. In other words, the rules of engagement, in my opinion, it's very logical to study the rules of engagement of the U.S. Army. I'm sure they're nothing like those of the IDF, and that should more or less be the model. But one thing is completely clear. When a stone is thrown at a soldier, there is certainly at least a doubt that it endangers a soldier's life. When there's a doubt, there's no doubt. You should shoot to kill. The rules of engagement of our heroic soldiers who go into Jenin and IEDs are hurled at them, they are told not to shoot, but to use riot dispersal means, non-lethal means. Any place that a soldier, a civilian, and of course a soldier that encounters a situation where there is the slightest doubt, even the slightest doubt, if there's any doubt, there's no doubt, if there's a danger, shoot to kill, period. That's the basis. Do you have any idea? I saw only a headline that the distinguished Mr. Gantz applied a pressure to facilitate the use of arms so that not everybody has to go around with a lawyer. Do you know, I saw the headline today, but I didn't have a chance to find out what it was. I don't know, but what I do know, that he bragged at the time that he endangered Golani soldiers in order not, God forbid, to harm anyone in Gaza. General Brick, would you like to comment? Yes. I think that it is unthinkable, even before the war, that when soldiers face any danger, whether from rocks or firebombs or the theft of ammunition and weapons right in front of them, that they don't shoot. And the soldier starts to be afraid that if he shoots when his life is in danger, he becomes more afraid of the court than of the danger to his life. And this was brought to the extreme, as you and Sheftel mentioned, when hundreds of Gazans came in, and the tankist says, we saw them, but we have rules of engagement, and we're not allowed to shoot at unarmed people. Has it been changed? There was an attempt to change it on the part of the prosecution, but soldiers are more afraid of the court than they are of the enemy. Do you want me to give you Gantz's telephone number to talk to him, to tell him to stop interfering? That's why we say, Oy Gantz, Oy Gantz. It was removed from the agenda. If Gantz says something like that, then he doesn't understand what war is. I think that's the situation. On that we say in Yiddish, in ganz verrückt, totally nuts.